The following podcast is a deep, shallow dive production.
And you're going to love it.
Okay, let's go.
Hey, what's up, everybody? Hope you guys had a good weekend. Hope you had a good day yesterday. I was close, man. I almost was going to get an episode out yesterday, but then Sunday, later in the day, I ended up with a friend. We went for a crazy incline walk, and she told me, she's like, hey, there's like this ridiculous hill in Laguna Beach, and I'm going to walk it. You want to do it with me? And I was like, you know what? I kind of do want to do that. Let's knock out some incline. So I'm going to start today with talking a little bit about incline because honestly, it was incredible. It was incredible. So let me help you understand this a little bit better. Because honestly, I'm going to really start to try to add incline to my regimen. And whether that's, trying to find somewhere outdoors or even at the gym at the treadmill. When I do my treadmill at the gym, honestly, like, I'm not kidding. Like, I'll pound out an hour really just walking at like 3.2, sometimes even 3 miles an hour. And, I'm really like looking at my phone the entire time. And honestly, I'm actually researching topics for the next day's podcast. I mean, I guess it's a little bit of multitasking, and that's, I do need to do that so it's efficient. But I also now, instead of just doing an hour at, let's say, 3.0 miles an hour or 3.2 or 3.4, maybe I'll do a half an hour at that and utilize that to kind of do some research on the phone, and then try to do the other 30 minutes really on incline. And I have started this. So I'll start out at like a 5% incline, and then I'll go up to a 7.5% incline, and then a 10% incline. And again, that's just walking. That's at the same 3.0. Why do I keep saying 3.0? 3 miles an hour or whatever. But I really love it. Like, I think this incline thing is absolutely something we should all add to our fitness regimen. And so after I did the incline with her yesterday, I kind of came home and I played around with ChatGPT, and I said, can you just give me a quick understanding of how beneficial walking on an incline is? Because I've started to do it at the gym and then outdoors. And when I'm on the treadmill at the gym, I'm starting out at a 5% incline and then going up to 10% in incline. And it seems to really make a difference in my heart rate. I also want to better understand if it helps burn fat better. And then here's ChatGPT's answer. Dude, my ChatGPT is like getting incredibly zesty. So I am reading this verbatim. So ChatGPT spits out, hell yes, incline walking. What is ChatGPT saying hell for? I find that funny. All right, this is verbatim. Hell yes. Incline walking is one of the most underrated fat burning, heart strengthening moves out there, especially on a treadmill where you can control the game. Here's the quick and dirty why incline walking works. Heart rate booster. Just a slight incline, 5 to 10%, spikes your heart rate way more than flat walking at the same speed. That's because your body has to work harder to push against gravity. Fat burn zone. The elevated heart rate keeps you in the fat burning zone without the joint impact of running. That's a good point. You're basically tricking your body into doing more with less pounding. Okay, that's actually really interesting. That's a good little tip there, ChatGPT. I don't know if you needed to swear at the beginning of that, but All right, so the third thing it says is glute and hamstring engagement. Inclines activate your posterior chain, glutes, hamstrings, calves. So you're toning the backside while you're at it. Actually, that is definitely true because I will tell you, man, as we were doing this thing yesterday, and basically we would walk up this giant hill and then kind of walk down. We did it 5 times, and it was legit. And I can totally feel that the next day, yesterday, in my hamstrings, my calves, and even my buttocks. My buttocks felt very nice. It really did. I was feeling my buttocks as I was walking, and I was like, man, that is like buns of steel. Ray D, buns of steel. I do have a. Nah, I'm not going to tell this story. Actually, should I tell this story? Oh, man. I don't know if I should tell this story. You know what? I am going to tell this story. I think like sophomore. No. Yeah. It was either my sophomore year in college or maybe junior year. I think it was sophomore year, actually. Anyway, in the old fraternity house, the Alpha Delta Phi, we had like. I honestly, I'm kind of having a hard time remembering this. I don't think I don't were we allowed to hire strippers back then? God, I seriously can't remember. I think we were actually. Anyway, there ended up being a adult female dancer at our fraternity house. I have no idea who found her where or whatever and what it was for. Man, I'm going to have to reach out to a couple of my frat bros, my frat bros. No, we didn't call each other frat bros. We called each other hood members. In our fraternity, we referred to each other as hood, like brotherhood. And so we'd call each other hood members. I'm going to have to reach out to a couple members of the hood and see if they remember this chick and why did we have her at the house? Like, I really don't even remember. And this had nothing to do with the famous Anything for a Buck party, which again was the original form of bricks that, thank God, the CIA never came down on me for. Okay. Anyway, so this dancer is there, and then she judged a best buns contest between our fraternity guys, and it came down to me and this guy named Andy Carson. I know Carson doesn't listen to this, and actually, Carson, he was a wrestler. I don't know if he was a state champion wrestler in high school. Think he was from the Cleveland area as well, but he was a really good wrestler and like kind of built like a wrestler and like stocky and all that. And he always kind of walked around in his boxers because he always thought he had like a nice butt, and he did actually. Not to say that I was looking at my fraternity brother's butt, but I mean that's the truth. He kind of had that stocky, kind of like a fullback in football, just thick, man, just thick. Anyway, dude, this is so ridiculous that I'm putting this on this podcast. But she ended up judging a best buns contest, and it came down to me against Carson. And guess who won? That's right, your boy won. And I really didn't even think I had a good butt back then. I think I have a good butt now, though. I definitely do, especially with this incline. We're gonna take this thing to the next level. All right. Anyway, holy, that should not be on recorded air for the internet to have. But you know what? That's okay. I'm going to leave it. All right. So that was glute and hamstring engagement. The number 4 benefit is calorie torch. You can burn up to twice as many calories walking on an incline versus flat. That's pure efficiency. And then number 5, according to ChatGPT, I like this. It says EPOC effect, afterburn, epoch effect. I don't know. I've never really heard that acronym EPOC, but it says while it's not as dramatic as high intensity interval training, HIIT, incline walking still gives you a mild afterburn effect because of the added intensity. Okay, so again, why incline walking works: heart rate booster 1, fat burn zone 2, glute and hamstring engagement 3, calorie torch 4, and the afterburn 5. And then it said, pro tip, walk at 3 to 4 miles an hour, increase the incline from 5% to 10% to 15% over time if you can handle it, and go for at least 30 minutes. That's the sweet spot for fat burn and endurance gain. You're not just walking, you're climbing your way to a leaner body. Keep that incline hustle going. All right, ChatGPT, that was a solid little recap. So anyway, I wanted to start out with that because I am going to make incline now part of my routine. And I will tell you, this morning, 150, no, what am I talking? 150, 145.6. So we have now broken the 146-pound barrier that I was really getting hung up on. And so I'm going to really add incline to the mix this week and see if I can get down to maybe 145 and sustain it. And by the way, like, I mean, I hope you guys know I'm just sharing the weight and stuff because I want you guys to understand really the outcome of the things I'm trying. I'm actually experimenting with my own body to hopefully benefit all of us. But I'm telling you, if you are out walking, if first of all, if you have not made walking part of your lifestyle, you've got to do that. You've got to do that. I'm serious. Whether it's in the morning, at lunch, at night, you have got to carve out time and go for a walk. Whether it's walking your dog, walking with your spouse, walking with your kids, it seriously, and I can't even believe I'm this guy right now. I really never thought I would be so into it. But I've said it before and I'm going to say it again. If there was only one form of exercise I was allowed to do, it would be walking. It absolutely has made a dramatic difference in my body. It really has. It absolutely has. So make sure you're walking. And then if you are walking, if you're on the treadmill at your gym, try the 5% incline. Start off with that. Like let's say you walk for 30 minutes, do 15 and 15. For the first week, you can do 15 on your regular, 3.1 or 3 miles an hour, whatever. And then use the same miles per hour and then just add 5% incline to it and try to go for the next 15 minutes for that. So anyway, all right, there we go. There is the walking thing. This week I'm going to air a couple interviews this week. Man, I'm getting some really great interviews and I hope you guys are enjoying them. Like I said, I am being a little more strategic in who I am interviewing, and I really want to make sure they're on point with the topics we talk about and the topics we really engage in and are trying to pull the curtain back. And I will tell you, I'm very excited that yesterday I got to interview probably my most, I mean, I don't know if you want to necessarily call this guy famous, although he is famous in certain circles, but his name is Richard Gage. And Richard is probably the aforementioned expert architect when it comes to what happened in 9/11. And this guy has been beating the 9/11 drum since 2006. And his story is pretty incredible. And I'm going to play something for you today. And actually, I'll probably try to play several clips leading up to actually airing his interview. But he is a internationally renowned architect, and it is amazing what he was able to share in our interview that basically, I mean, in my opinion, pretty much proves it was virtually impossible from an engineering and architecture standpoint for the Twin Towers to have collapsed the way that they did. So let me play this quick bit. And then this is wild, man. This is from 2014. I'm sorry, this is actually from 2008. Sorry about that. I have another clip of his from 2014. So this is kind of one of the original clips that he did on television from 2008. And by the way, this was on KMPH Great Day. I think it was a San Francisco morning show.
He's an architect experienced in steel structures. Now Richard Gage is touring the country with a controversial message about September 11th.
Richard Gage is here to show us why he's calling for a more thorough investigation into the collapse of the World Trade Center buildings. Thank you so much for joining us.
You're very welcome. It's great to be here.
Well, first of all, give us a little bit more about your background.
Well, I'm an architect of 20 years, member of the American Institute of Architects, and have been studying steel-framed, fireproof buildings for about that long.
We ask that for clarification because as we get into this, we want people to make sure that you're not just somebody with a wacky idea.
Right.
Okay? You come with some science to you. What is the official reason for the collapse of the World Trade Center towers?
Well, we're told that the planes hit the buildings, and there was an explosion and a fire, and about an hour and a half later, in the case of the North Tower, the buildings collapsed due to structural weakening due to the fires. The problem is that we don't have large gradual deformations associated with collapses, and fires in high-rises have never brought down a steel frame high-rise building at all, ever.
Let me jump in real quick. By the way, again, you feel free to look this guy up. Richard Gage, dude is totally legit. Okay, what he said there, he said fires in high-rises have never brought down a steel frame building ever. And then the addition I want to make to that is, it's never happened since. So think about that. And again, this is why we have to leverage hindsight. We've got to leverage what happened in the past to make sure we don't fall for the same, traps and tricks and shenanigans and tomfoolery moving forward. But think about it, like what took place that day with those fires in September 11th in the Twin Towers. It's never happened again ever anywhere in the future either.
And what we have, unfortunately, is the evidence in the Twin Towers and the third skyscraper to collapse that day, which most people don't know anything about it. We have the evidence of the 10 key features of controlled demolition.
By the way, one of the things we talked a lot about in the interview was the building 7. I don't even want to call it a tower, although it was bigger than I realized when he explained it. But again, remember building 7. If you, for those people that, and by the way, one of my super close friends, I'm not going to put him on blast right now, but man, the one thing him and I can never agree on is 9/11. Like, bro thinks it was a bunch of random dudes with box cutters. I mean, it's insane. And this is like a guy that I hold in incredibly high regard, different than the one I talked about last week. But I don't know, man. We cannot get on the same page with this. And so, to me, one of the things that I like to talk about when I'm in discussions about 9/11 with people, forget about the towers. Let's talk about Building 7. Let's talk about the Pentagon. And let's talk about that, that United Flight, I think 93, that supposedly crashed in a field in Pennsylvania, and there were no remnants of the plane in that field either.
In the case of Building 7, it collapses straight down into its own footprint at free fall speed in the first 100 feet. It's dropping, as you can see, symmetrically, smoothly, at free fall speed in the first 100 feet, 2.5 seconds. This is uncanny. There's 40,000 tons of structural steel designed to resist this collapse.
So what, a 47-story building?
Yeah, it's just called Building 7, right? A football field away from the Twin Towers.
Okay, so what we're showing is left what happened. In fact, right is a controlled where you are using, or the people who made this happen, used demolition.
Indeed, and it's a direct comparison. And you can see that, indeed, almost free fall speed, free fall acceleration through 40,000 tons of structural steel.
So in my interview with him, this might be one where you might want to, if you listen on Spotify, you can watch the video, and then if you want to watch the video, it'll be on YouTube and then Spotify. So those are the two platforms where all of these guest interviews, you can actually watch them. Now I'm going to put a bunch of clips on social media as well, but like through Apple Podcasts, iHeart, Pandora, Audible, wherever else you watch it. My man, Brad Hershey, listens through something called Republic. What the hell is that, Hirsch? What platform is that, bro? Why do you listen through that?
That is uncanny. So we have 700 architects and engineers demanding a new investigation as a result of this evidence and the evidence in the World Trade Center.
Again, remember, this interview is from 2008 or 2006. I forget which one I said earlier, but, you know, Richard has been pounding this drum a long time, and it's pretty insane. Obviously, he's had a lot of success and made a lot of progress. He's been on a ton of really big podcasts. He's been on the Patrick Bet David podcast. He's been on the Jake Shields podcast. You know, I don't know if he's ever been on Joe Rogan. I'll have to go back and ask him that. But he's made the rounds. He's probably been on over, I think, like 100 different podcasts and media platforms. So this is not somebody that is kind of doing his first interview. I got connected with him through my man Jay Slay USA. Jay Slay USA had him on. I like calling him Jay Slay USA. I'm just going to refer to him as that instead of calling him Jeremy. But anyway, all right, let's listen to a little bit of the rest of this. I don't know if I'll play all of it, but I do want to introduce some clips from him before the actual episode airs.
That is very explosive. Almost every architect and engineer we show this information to agrees with us that these are controlled demolitions. If we can get them to look at the information, because obviously the implications of a controlled demolition are dark for our country, because that means somebody besides Al-Qaeda was involved, because these have to be easily three of the most highly secure buildings outside the Pentagon.
All right, you know what? That 2000, I seriously am blanking if I said 2006 or 2008 earlier, but I'm going to cut it there. There's a little bit more. Maybe I'll play the rest next time. But that is a perfect segue into another clip that I want to play for you guys. So this is a guy named John Kiriko. Kiriko. And he is a former CIA intelligence officer that actually, here, let me read this. This is from his Wikipedia. It says, he was an intelligence analyst and operations officer for the CIA's Counterterrorism Center and a senior investigator for Senate Foreign Relations Committee. Kiriko became the only CIA officer to be convicted for exposing the CIA's enhanced interrogation program, having passed classified information to a reporter. He pleaded guilty and was sentenced to 30 months in prison. Holy shit. Anyway, I'm trying to get this guy on the podcast, and he's kind of making the rounds. Now, I will say this, when I see stuff like this, I'm not going to lie, my spidey senses kind of click in, and I'm like, okay, this is weird. Like, this guy's talking all kinds of shit on the CIA, like really, really bad stuff. And I'll be honest, in my mind, I'm like, I am very surprised they're letting him do this. And I'm very surprised that he has the balls to do this, to be honest. And I'm very surprised that he's even doing this. So, I will say, have a healthy bit of skepticism about everything, even things that are like in your favor and things that you're like, oh, that's awesome. I'm so glad this guy is talking and this came out. So hopefully I'll be able to get him on the podcast, but he's definitely making the rounds. And again, I mean, oh God, I don't even know what to think anymore, to be honest with you. But regardless, it is interesting the things that he's talking about. And the reason I want to play this clip is because it kind of plays along with, really what Richard said at the end of that last segment, where he said, it's very dark to think about the Twin Towers or Building 7 as being controlled demolition or anything besides Al-Qaeda. So listen to this.
And then George W. Bush gets elected president. And 9/11 happens. And as soon as 9/11 happens, Bush says, we got to invade Iraq. It's their fault. 9/11's their fault. We're like, no, they had like literally nothing to do with 9/11. Well, we're going to invade them anyway.
And by the way, again, remember, when 9/11 happened, Iraq had nothing to do with it. Saddam Hussein had nothing to do with it. But we invaded them anyway. And remember, this is all part of the Forever Wars, 20-year Forever Wars, military-industrial complex, all of the things we've talked so many times, but I want to keep reinforcing. All right, let's listen to the rest.
Okay, well, We think this is a mistake, but battle lines drawn, as I said earlier.
Was there no conversations, like real conversations with?
The only conversations were between Cheney, Condi Rice, and Rumsfeld.
Again, that's that neocon group: Dick Cheney, Condoleezza Rice, Rumsfeld, Donald Rumsfeld.
But mostly Cheney's deputies, Scooter Libby and Addington and, all those guys. Zal Khalilzad.
No one in the CIA could get in Bush's ear and be like, look.
We were absolutely preoccupied with Al-Qaeda.
Got it.
That was the thing. Again, he said we were absolutely preoccupied with Al-Qaeda. So everything was Al-Qaeda, 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 Osama bin Laden, Osama bin Laden, Osama bin Laden. And again, they just used the confusion of all Middle Eastern countries and brown people and bad people being the same to then just lump Iraq into it. And it was kind of like, buy one, get one free, or regime change one, regime change the other for free.
Okay.
Everybody in the building's working on Al-Qaeda.
Okay.
And then Bush calls one day and says, oh, by the way, come up with an invasion plan because we're going to invade Iraq and overthrow Saddam Hussein. We're like, what? What are you talking about? But that was it. That was the order. So we decide to invade Iraq, and the CIA says, let's say we do invade Iraq and we overthrow Saddam Hussein. Then what? And Dick Cheney says, we're going to put this fella, Ahmed Chalabi, he's going to be the president. And we said, whoa, no, we are not.
Cheney said that.
Yeah, we have a burn notice on Cheney. I mean on Chalabi, and on everybody associated with Chalabi. We're not working with Chalabi. And then the CIA reissued the burn notice saying, listen, this is from 10 years ago, but just remember, we don't deal with this guy.
I've never heard of this Chalabi. I have no idea who that is, so I'll try to look him up and see if there's any value in understanding him. But again, I think this is really interesting. And like I said, let's for argument's sake take John at his word that this is all legit, and maybe because of his 30 months in prison, and I'll have to see if he actually served that entire time. I don't know. Maybe he is allowed to talk about it, and maybe he's not scared to talk about it because he's definitely talking about it. So anyway, all right, let's listen. There's a little more of this.
So what Cheney did is he ordered the Undersecretary of Defense for Intelligence to secretly reopen a channel with Chalabi. And he specifically told him, don't tell the CIA. I remember, part of my job, or 90% of my job at the time, was reading 10, 15,000 cables a day, 20,000 that were coming in to brief the director. I'd boil that 10 or 20,000 cables down to a half a dozen of the most important issues to brief the director in the morning. And then we started getting these cables. Like, the weapons of mass destruction are located at these geo-coordinates. I'm like, holy shit, who found this? Super secret, double secret probation kind of special source that nobody can know about.
All right, that clip ended there. I'll have to try to find the rest of that podcast and see where he was going with that. But I think I know where he was going with that. He probably was like, all of a sudden there's a backdoor channel opened up with this Chalabi guy, and then Cheney told Chalabi, whoever the hell that is, not to tell the CIA. And then all of a sudden, the CIA is getting this incredible intel of the weapons of mass destruction are here, they're there, they're everywhere. And turns out they were absolutely nowhere. So I thought that was really cool to kind of listen to that. And again, let's take him for his word, and let's believe that there isn't a secret psyop going on with this guy, because to me, this is very interesting to kind of show how that, really that facade of weapons of mass destruction was implanted into the narrative. And so it was done through, backdoor stuff with Cheney. And remember, this is back in 2006, 2007, 2008. Like, this is before Obama. So this would have been probably 2006 or 2005, maybe even a little earlier than that. But the internet wasn't what it was. It wasn't what it is now remotely then. I mean, really, the internet and social media as we know it did not really get going until 2006. That was where Facebook really, really started to, make its mark. And I would honestly say, I don't even think it really kicked in until maybe 2009, 2010. Maybe even a little later than that. Like, I go back and I look at my own posting patterns, and I like to consider myself an early adopter to all this stuff. I really was. And it really wasn't until maybe 2011, 2012 that I was posting on a consistent basis. And even back then, the posts were not obviously as well read or received as they are these days. So anyway, I thought that was interesting from John, and it kind of, again, speaks to all of this narrative creation that's happened because of 9/11. I mean, really, at 9/11, I think the JFK assassination was another gigantic turning point. We have not really talked anything about the moon landing, but we're going to talk about that. I think that was another sort of skepticism point for the American people. But if you take the moon landing out of it, it really started with the JFK assassination. I think, again, and I believe I've said this before, but I think that's when Americans started to distrust their government. So it started there, and then there's a bunch of other things that have happened, but I think the next big one would be 9/11. And so anyway, the interview with Richard will air later this week. I do want to play a few more sort of pre-clips of him so you guys get to understand him a little bit better before you hear the interview. And then what else? All right, I've played this before, but I think this actually goes in line with this episode. So I'm going to play it again. And this is a theme I'm seeing more and more, whether it's, Alan Shabaro, who I had on the podcast, Josephine Gilbo, who I had on the podcast. Veterans are coming out and they are speaking their truth. And here's another guy. I couldn't find his name, but I've played this clip before, but I'm going to play it again and take you out on this clip because I think it's so good. I really do. I think it's so good. And stop whatever you're doing for the next 1 minute and really listen to this guy's words. I think they're incredibly heavy and they're incredibly impactful. And again, put yourself in his shoes. Put yourself in Alan Shabaro from my previous podcast shoes, Josephine Gilbo from my previous podcast interviews shoes, where these are people that joined the military because they thought one thing, and now for the rest of their lives, they're living with the haunting memories of what they're now realizing is the truth. And this really speaks to PTSD, being a real thing. And it definitely is real because these people have regrets. They absolutely have regrets. All right, call a spade. Please give this a listen, and we'll talk to you soon.
I'm at the point now where I don't think I fought for the country. I fought for some politician's view on something. There are particular guys that I think of that I killed. And I remember one dude in particular that I killed, and I shot his buddy. And then I came through his room. I killed him in front of his wife in a bedroom because he went for a gun. And I think about him now, and it's like, all right, why did I kill that guy? Well, because he went for a gun. Okay, but why did he go for a gun? Well, because I was in his fucking room at 2 a.m. Well, why was I in his room at 2 a.m? Well, because George fucking Bush was pissed that Saddam Hussein allegedly wanted to kill his dad, so we invaded. And then I start to think, was this guy funny? What if I met him in Paris over a coffee? Would we have actually liked each other and I just kill him because a politician sent us here for weapons of mass destruction that didn't exist? The only reason we were killing each other is because we were born on different parts of the world. That's it. Yeah.
when you start seeing Ukraine and some of these things that are happening right now, like putting us in these wars that there's just no winners. And when you've been to those countries, it's like, damn, like those are real people. I watched real people there, and it doesn't feel real from the United States because we just see it on TV. But like when you've walked those streets, it just hits you different.
That was a great way to end it.
This episode was brought to you by the new book, Deep Shallow Dive Into You, available now on Amazon and Barnes & Noble in hardcover and paperback. Don't forget to sign up for our new mailing list on our website at deepshallowdive.com.